Welcome, guys, to another episode of Consciously Curious. We have Justin Doggett, the face and the brains behind Kyoto Black. He has been a trailblazer in cold brew. So cold brew, as most people know, is like on the up and up right now. But he's taken it one step further and using the Kyoto method.
Yeah.
Right, the Kyoto method. And most of us can vouch for being coffee as having as the life source for our daily routine. And then there's going to be some of us that want to turn coffee into potential business, right? So Justin's here to kind of enlighten us on the ins and outs of how he got Kyoto off the ground.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess let's start off with where did you discover your passion for coffee?
So it's kind of funny when I think about my history with coffee. I was never really so big into coffee. I remember when I was 10 years old and my grandma would send me to McDonald's to get a cup of coffee for her. And like, I would sneak a sip of it or, make some instant coffee as a kid.
Okay.
And I was like, this is an interesting flavor, but yeah, it needs cream and sugar. Like
Yes.
that was the whole thing. Right.
Yes.
And aside from just kind of sneaking sips of coffee, I didn't really drink coffee until I graduated from college.
Okay.
Like I barely touched it.
Yeah.
But what made it interesting for me is that I was a wine drinker already.
Oh.
So yeah, basically I grew up drinking wine with my dad.
Okay.
As a teenager, he started letting me drink wine.
Yeah.
And we would have it with dinner. And one of the things that I noticed is with the third wave of coffee, like the more modern kind of like quality focus, more fruit and acidity driven coffees, I found a lot of those similar flavors from wine.
Okay.
I became a big wine fan. Like
Sure.
I remember Gary Vaynerchuk from Wine Library.
Wine Library,
I used to
yeah.
watch Wine Library back like 2006, that kind of thing. So for me, I was like, wow, these coffees taste very similar to wine. So after I graduated from college, there was a local cafe that I was a fan of, and
Okay.
I just decided, I need to work somewhere. So why don't I try to get a job as a barista there?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And how's that role? How's being a barista?
Oh, it's fun. I like being a barista a lot.
Yeah.
When you start learning the first thing that everybody gets excited about when they're a barista is latte art.
Sure.
And, I went through that whole thing where it was like the latte art. And after a while, you start learning more about the coffee side of things, like the actual chemistry of coffee, how coffee brews, why it brews that way.
Yeah.
You end up getting into this real rabbit hole that I feel certain types of personalities can become really obsessed about.
Okay.
Optimizing it.
Right.
Just
right.
there are so many things that you can optimize. Coffee, you can optimize.
So where can you take the role of a barista? Is there a ladder to climb or?
Yeah, I mean, generally I would say people who start off as baristas are at least on a track to become supervisors or shift leaders within, whatever organization they're with or at other places. Some people can even become managers. It really depends on the internal culture of where they are. Where I originally started as a barista was a small cafe in Hyde Park called Istria.
Okay.
And they're no longer there. They had, various issues. But in any case, though, in that particular role, there, wasn't necessarily like this path for growth for me, just because it was so small and it was like I was the last guy there. So even though from the coffee standpoint, like from an execution standpoint, I became really, really good fast. But
you have a creative side to you that maybe wasn't able to be let out.
Well, yeah, I have a creative side, but also like I can be like very abrasive and kind of direct and blunt and, all these things. And it was like the soft skills necessarily didn't put me in the right position. I would have the habit of kind of calling people out kind of in a indirect way.
Sure.
It's like, I remember we had one person who's a supervisor. She got promoted to being supervisor. And I was like, man, she doesn't really, she's late all the time. Like there are times where we have to open the shop. She's my supervisor with the key and I'm waiting out half an hour late to open the shop.
Right.
For her to get, to the shop. And at a certain point, I should have said this to my GM, but I was like, hey, do you mind if I like show up like just like 5 minutes late for work? Because he was letting her slide with it.
Right.
He was letting her slide. Like I brought it up to him. I was like, dude, she's late like 45 minutes. We got to open the shop.
Right.
And he was kind of shutting me down like it wasn't my place to bring it up necessarily. And yeah, I know. And, I think to an extent, I definitely did some things that were probably abrasive and, I just know I did.
That's okay.
Because I was like 21, 20, something like that. So I'm sure I said plenty of things that warranted a prickly response. But in that moment, I was like, hey, do you mind if I just show up like 5 minutes late? Because there's a bus that will get me here 5 minutes late. And it's much easier for me to just take that bus. And he's like, no. You know, he was like super pissed about it, as he should have been.
Right.
But that was my way of pushing his button, saying like, hey, man, you're letting people come here late. They're supervisors. You know, this is...
Did anything change?
I mean, they closed. Like, you know, like I left. I got a job offer at Next Restaurant.
Okay.
And they closed.
Yeah, and then they realized what they missed.
You know, it was like, you know, whether I was integral, you know, who knows? But I doubt it. But what I can say is there was a certain standard that I realized like needed to be kept, even though I wasn't as good as I was ever going to be. Like there were still place for me to grow. But even in that little kind of opportunity, I was like, because I originally didn't even get the job, honestly. It was a minimum wage job. Yeah. And I was denied that job. Right. And then the guy who received it didn't want it because he found out later how bad the pay was. Oh. And then they called me back. So they're like, you don't have the job. Now you have the job. So I got it. Yeah. And then in working it, I kind of saw like, oh, you know, there's so many issues with like this particular role in a small cafe. There's no opportunity to grow here. So I started looking at other places, and I got a job offer just randomly. Right. But as far as like small cafes and stuff, the culture will dictate how much you can grow, really. Okay. You know, and that culture was much more restrictive because it's just, you know, more scarcity minded, I think. You know,
yeah. So at what point, like maybe did that give you a sense of, hey, you know, if I really want to take this coffee thing to the next level, maybe I have to be my own boss? Like, where did you get your entrepreneurial spirit from?
I feel like I got it from just ultimately not liking being told what to do.
Right. Yeah.
Authority, you know, it's just like, I feel
or you're the only, like, I'm only responsible for myself.
Yeah. I mean, I like being responsible for other people too. Like one of the things, for example, you know, I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 8 years now. And one of the things that makes me just as happy as, you know, getting to a brown belt in jiu-jitsu is teaching jiu-jitsu as well. Like I take a lot of pride in watching these guys develop. And I would say I probably am inclined to be more like of a coach type person. Like I could see myself easily in a coach role. Like I'm very good at coaching people through things. And, you know, I was a trainer for a company training baristas. You know, I was a trainer for Metropolis. And I like the coaching role. Right. You know, but at the same time, it's like you have to be not just the coach, you have to be the head coach. Right. Because at the end of the day, you need to not only be able to tell people kind of what the role is, but also establish the protocol too. Yeah. And
just lead by example.
Yeah, and lead by example. And that's what I was kind of lacking, is that ability to establish my protocol. And then also, I just saw there was this real opportunity because at the end of the day, I do want to become wealthy. Like I want to be, like I have a great network, and that is a source of wealth. Like me and my wife were talking about it yesterday, where she was like, you know, because I'm still growing my business and everything. She's like, you know, we're poor now, but it's like not a big deal because, you know, we're still making moves and everything.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, babe, we're not poor. We're broke. There's a difference. When we were growing up, we were poor. Okay. Like I grew up poor, you know, we didn't have anything, including a network. We just don't have money. We're broke. We don't have cash.
Okay. I love that.
But we're not poor because look at our mind. Look at how we can see the world. Yeah. Look at our network of people. Right. You know, if we were poor, we wouldn't have that. Right. You know, and I felt like there was an opportunity through having my own business to grow that.
Yes. Yes. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, it just takes a creative person to think that and shift in perspective to understand that, hey, you know, it's really not that bad, especially if you're trying to, you know, it's a game of chess and you're in it for the long game. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I love that. So we'll probably come back to that. But when did you first get into or discover Kyoto style?
So around the time that I was working at my first cafe job, I was first exposed to like tasting coffees from different places. Okay. So a couple times they had us, you know, try coffees roasted by other places, which is great to do. You just see what everyone's doing and it informs your palate. And I had a coffee that just blew my mind. It was my first ever natural processed coffee. And basically, I can just kind of sum this up really quickly because coffee, really, I can talk about it all day. Right, right. But in any case, you have really two main different types of coffee: natural processed and fully washed. So coffee is the seed of a fruit. Right. And you remove that fruit from the actual seed, and then that gets dried and roasted. That's kind of the sped up version of that process. But there are two ways that you can kind of remove that fruit. The first way is called the wash process, where you take it and you run it through a wet mill. So you take that fruit off the shrub, you run it through a wet mill, and then it just squeezes the seed out of the fruit, basically, right? So it's kind of a wet process. It gets washed off with water from there, and then put into fermentation tanks to get the little slime off of it and all that. And that gives you a really clean, bright tasting cup of coffee, like this coffee, for example. We're drinking a Kenyan coffee, and Kenyan coffees are noted for their acidity. So a lot of them go through a 72-hour washing process. So they come through really sharp and really clean because they've been washed very clean. The picking process is, all ripe cherries. So you really get that fruit and that clean, bright acidity.
Right.
There's another way of doing it where basically you allow that fruit to turn into a raisin after you've picked it. You pick it fresh and ripe, and then you allow it to sit on these beds in the sun and raisin. And you have to rake them and make sure air is circulating and all that stuff. But in sitting inside that fruit environment, it starts to ferment a little bit, and it picks up more of the fruit flavors. The seed picks up more of the fruit flavors. And then that ends up getting dry milled off and then roasted, and turned into coffee.
Okay.
And the difference between the two is basically this one will give you a cleaner cup, but you get kind of the less sweetness, less kind of like
more of an aftertaste.
Yeah. I mean, you can get great sweetness from washed coffees. Washed coffees are incredible. Some of the best coffees in the world are going to be washed. Usually the natural process is considered to be inferior because it's cheaper to do. It requires less water. You can hide defects. There are all these manner of things that you can do with that process because this makes the coffee transparent.
Okay.
Whereas, you can cover up some of the funk with the fruit, know. And I had a excellent natural process coffee. It was incredible. It was like blueberry pancakes and just super crazy. And I was like, who roasted this? And at this time, I was thinking that it was like just the roaster that was special, and I can only get it from this source.
Oh, okay.
I found out that that's not how coffee works.
Okay.
But I sought out Passion House was the company.
Passion House.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they were the guys who produced that coffee. I remember it was August 2011. And I went and sought them out, and I was like, I got to become friends with these guys. And, and that basically got me into the whole, coffee scene, like starting to kind of figure out the coffee scene. Okay. Around that time, I was hearing about, because I was friends with baristas and people who were in the coffee scene.
Sure.
They were talking about, different methods and what's better. And one person was talking about Kyoto style coffee. And he's like, oh, yeah, it's a slow drip style. It takes like all this time. It's like super meticulous. And the machines look like these crazy contraptions and all that stuff. And I was just like, man, I need to see what that's about.
Right.
So I found at this time the only place in Chicago that served Kyoto style coffee. They were the only place with a brewer.
Okay.
Cafe Streets.
Okay. Where?
That's on Division. It's like just south of Wicker Park.
Okay. Sure.
Like Division and Walcott.
Okay.
And I went there and got some Kyoto style. And it was not very good.
Oh.
Yeah, and I think the reason it was not very good is because no one really had established a protocol yet.
Did they think they was good? Or
I don't know.
They just didn't know what to base it off of?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if they knew a baseline for it. It was just weird to me. But I liked the weirdness.
You saw potential.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was weird. And I was like, man, this is interesting. Like, the texture's good, and it's kind of like luscious, but it just doesn't taste very good. Mm-hmm. And I found, maybe there are certain beans that don't taste good on it necessarily, like a Sumatran, for example.
Really? And they don't?
Well, depends on the bean. Like, if there's a bean that has like a really vegetal quality, it might taste like consommé, which I think it would be really awesome to actually use as a consommé, but it might not taste great as a coffee. That sort of thing, where it's like it enhances or magnifies whatever the coffee kind of has in it.
Sure.
Yeah, so I thought the style was really awesome. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go and buy one of these brewers.
Right.
And I get home and I see that they're like $400. And I'm like, all right.
Pump the brakes.
So like, I think I'm going to build one of these brewers instead.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I ended up sourcing some a separatory funnel from the Science Surplus store and lab stand.
You don't need a teacher's certificate or license. No.
And actually, the Science Surplus store is really awesome just to go there if you ever want to feel like a third grader again.
Okay.
Because they have like all the old science gear that you remember from class. Yeah. So I went and got the gear for that, and I kind of really MacGyvered it together with like a pitcher from my blender and a condiment squeeze bottle, and all these little hacks. I put it together, And I got like a really decent cup of coffee out of that. And I was like, damn, I need to just keep doing this.
Right. Right.
And, that became the hobby, just making coffee at home.
Yeah. Do you still use your own contraption?
Yeah, so when I'm at home, I do, yeah. My home brewer is like my original was the
But now you have
too.
like professional vats and everything.
Well, the home one, at least, I still use like an AeroPress and everything, and a mason jar and all that stuff.
That's kind of cool.
It's just like a home brewer.
Just like, it's just an homage to where you came from and the roots and things like that.
So I remember back when I used to brew at home, because I was, trying to grow the business at home once I realized it was viable.
Right.
And there would always be this sound in the house pretty much at all times. And I started like calling it the heartbeat of the home.
Oh, that's awesome.
And my wife, she's like annoyed by it originally, but then she kind of just was like, got used to it.
Yeah. I love that.
So,
I was going to say like a metronome or like a clock, but like, heartbeat is that much more. Oh man. So at what point did you know like you had something like that? This is a great hobby to get into, or did you right off the bat see potential in it to become a business?
So I did not see the potential originally. So I was making coffee at home, and at this point I'd gotten a job with Metropolis, and I was their trainer. So I was their head barista, salaried employee with benefits.
Wow.
And my job was to teach the staff.
Yeah, and you love teaching.
I love teaching, so it was perfect. And I got to learn so much through teaching. It was crazy. There was so much I didn't know. And that ended up really helping me start Kyoto Black.
Okay.
The fact that I was able to teach them and then kind of learn more about the fundamentals of coffee.
Yeah.
And apply that to my brewing at home and then see the results. It was a feedback loop.
No, that's teaching in general.
Yeah.
It's just like you can't teach something until you really know it, and if you're trying to teach it, you'll find the loopholes. Like you'll find the holes.
You'll find the way.
Exactly.
Yeah. You'll find like those angles.
Yes.
And no one had to tell me to do the Kyoto style. It was just something that I was doing at home. So it was like the perfect scenario. I'm teaching. I'm doing coffee all day basically.
Yeah.
I'm at work doing coffee, and then I'm at home doing coffee.
Yeah.
And Metropolis is really generous. They give free beans to their employees.
Oh, dope.
So you get a free pound of coffee a week, and you can't even drink a free pound of coffee a week.
That's plenty. Yeah.
That's plenty. That's 4 pounds a month, right? So I was like, okay, let me just give this coffee away to people that I'm making. I'm at,
Oh, yeah.
I'm brewing.
The cold brew,
I'm brewing Kyoto style and using it to tinker because I can do test batches and just kind of run through the coffee.
Well, you want to get feedback.
And I want to get feedback, and I kind of want to show it off, and want to make people happy.
Right.
That's a part of like that kind of restaurant industry thing too. It like deep down, the people who are really good in the kind of restaurant industry, they want to make people happy. That's like their number
just
one
share
thing.
your passion.
They want to see people go wow, and that like I definitely caught that bug, but I was giving it away to my friends at jiu-jitsu in empty water bottles, and they started like talking about it like all day. And I would hear people who I didn't, because I do jiu-jitsu and we're kind of in a separate area from the personal trainers.
Sure.
And I would have like personal trainers come up to me like, yo, I heard your coffee's amazing. Yeah, so the word started to spread organically. I wasn't even asking anyone for anything. I was just bringing it.
Right.
And I literally was like, yo, I like you, man. Here's some coffee. That's how it was. It was just for everybody.
Right.
Like, and next thing you know, I kind of got busy and I stopped bringing coffee as much. And then next thing, people are like, hey, Justin, you got some of that coffee, man? And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm just like busy. Sorry, I haven't been making as much.
Okay.
And they're like, nah, dude, it's cool, man. We actually felt guilty. Like, can I give you money for it? And I was like, yeah, sure. So he's like, how much should I give you? And I was like, I don't know.
Right? It's like, how much is it worth?
Yeah. I was like, I don't know, $10? And he's like, bet. So I was selling, it was basically the size of a wine bottle.
Okay.
So this was like literally the deal of the century because it was $10 for a wine bottle of Kyoto Black.
Where are you getting these wine bottles from?
So I would get Gerolsteiner water, sparkling water.
Oh, okay.
Cases of it.
Okay.
Because I would just drink that stuff I would pound it.
Sure.
Yeah, so I get cases of it. And I would just save the empty bottles and clean them out and then fill them with coffee.
For sure.
Yeah. So at a certain point, I was at the point where I was taking the empty cases of Gerolsteiner bottles and filling them up with coffee, like 15 of them. With coffee to take to the gym.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's $10 a bottle?
Yeah. So it was like, and it was free coffee.
Right.
Like, I was just getting the coffee for free. So I was like, whatever.
Right.
And I remember having this kind of like, I'm not really a sentimental person, But I remember having this crazy moment where I was coming into the gym and I had all these coffees with everybody's name written on them,
Oh.
you know, and I was walking past holding this case and everyone's like, hey, what's up, Justin? How's it going? And I'm like, what's up, dudes? And I'm just like looking at these names on the bottles. I'm like, man, all these people are supporting my dream, like in this like kind of weird way where I feel like this is almost like a movie scene, you know? And I was like, damn, this is crazy. And even with that, I still didn't necessarily think to turn it into a business.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Even with that, I was like, oh, you know what? I want to start a business just because I feel like, you know, it's in my...
Well, I mean, were you happy at Metropolis?
I was as happy as you can be working for someone else.
Okay.
I would put it that way, like, because Metropolis is amazing.
Yeah.
Tony Dreyfus is one of the best people I've ever met.
Is he the head honcho?
Yeah, he's
Okay.
the owner.
Okay.
I remember I was just coming in one day and it was like a really cold day, but I literally just left my car. I wasn't even cold, but you know how you have the habit when you come indoors, you're like,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I also get kind of like pale very easily from the cold. And Tony saw me. He's like, Justin, where are your gloves? And I was like, oh, dude, I'm fine. Like, I just literally got out of my car. It's just like, you know, not. He's like, no, dude. Took his gloves off and gave them to me.
Oh,
He's one of those
that
kind
of guy.
He's
yeah.
that kind of guy. He's that kind of guy.
Okay.
Like,
good to hear.
yeah. So I think wherever I was, I would have left to start something because it's just how I am, you know?
Yeah.
But originally, believe it or not, I was thinking I wanted to do a t-shirt business. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would go to Japan and they have this one t-shirt that I think is the best t-shirt I've ever worn. And I was like, I want to bring this shirt to America.
Okay.
And start selling it.
Okay.
And it's like just a really basic like t-shirt, but it's just
Is it like
everything about it, the thread.
Uniqlo kind of thing, or
It's not even Uniqlo. It's like a Hanes type shirt.
okay?
But it's a different brand.
Okay.
BVD.
BVD.
Yeah.
So what's you said thread or the material? And
Yeah, like just
the design.
the-
Is there what?
Everything about the way that shirt is made is perfect.
Wow.
For a white
I gotta
t-shirt.
look into this.
It's the perfect white t-shirt.
Okay.
I have like maybe 15 of them.
No, you and I are simple guys. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I would have
I have
like
15
15 of
white
the same.
shirts, yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, that was what I was thinking. And then I started to look into it more and I was like, man, retail is actually really difficult. Like clothing is an incredibly hard business. And you have to really start dealing with Bangladesh and all these different, you know, foreign kind of
Sources,
things.
yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was my wife or myself or whoever, but I was just like, damn, I'll just sell coffee. Like, you know, because I told my wife I didn't want to sell coffee.
And why?
I don't know. I was just like, I want to do something different.
Did you have a fear that you would lose the passion if you turned it into a business?
Possibly.
Right? Because you said you were dealing with it day and night.
Yeah, you know, I felt like I just wanted to be more kind of well-rounded. But then I realized that I really need to just be a specialist.
That's another thing.
Yeah.
Well-rounded. I mean, what do you mean by well-rounded? Because all you were doing was coffee.
Right.
But maybe you didn't get burnt out because you were always learning something new
Well,
and tinkering with it?
I think for whatever reason, I just felt like the grass was greener somewhere else.
Okay.
Like coffee's already like, you know, it's gone as far as you can take it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what can I do with coffee? Like start a cafe? You know, what am I going to do with a cafe? Cafes don't make money.
Okay.
You know, that kind of thing. And then I was like, wait a minute. Why don't I just do a consumer packaged goods?
Oh.
I'd be like Coca-Cola,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And all they do is make sugar syrup. Like, and it's $1 billion company. It's one of the most valuable companies on the planet.
Yeah, you're right.
And all they do is make sugar syrup.
Right.
So I was like, why don't I do that and not kill people?
Oof. But you didn't have that thought off the bat. You had that thought after you realized you didn't want to do t-shirts?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Okay. I ran away from my destiny, I think, just a little bit.
Of t-shirts? Or of
coffee.
Oh,
I'm destined to make
okay.
coffee.
Yeah.
Like, the more, you know, when I think about how perfectly it fits with my
Yeah, it does.
character, when I was 14, I got a creme brulee set for Christmas from my dad.
Oh.
Because I was obsessed with the Food Network and
Right.
I was baking stuff.
Right.
I remember when I had a crush on a girl in high school, I baked her a cheesecake for her birthday and brought it to school.
That's dope.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm sure people were jealous. Like,
People were really jealous. I mean, she ended up not dating me, but That actually probably worked in my favor.
It did.
Because
No,
I
it
met
did.
my wife. And,
There you go.
You know, but yeah, I mean, I've always been a foodie.
Yeah.
Always been like tasting everything like really intently.
Okay.
You know.
So going with the next step, you realized that you wanted to provide a direct-to-consumer service or product. What were the next step? Like, what did you have to figure out next? You
How I was gonna package it, how I was gonna get to market,
right? Like, where are you gonna make
Where I was
it?
gonna make
Did you like not know that you had to rent space? Like, because like in my head, like in the city of Chicago, like there's a bunch of loops that you got to jump.
Oh man,
through.
yeah. And I had a guy who worked for the city who was just like on me in this really kind of weird way. I've heard complaints about him, just abuse of power kind of things, and unfortunately, I kind of crossed his path, and that was, you know, not to mention I was in a place trying to make the coffee. I'd already signed the lease and everything, and it turns out there's this whole convoluted maze of use and occupancy and zoning. I mean, the zoning part was easy, but what they don't tell you is on the city website they say do step A, B, C, but it's actually do step A, C, B.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not in the way they tell you to do it.
Okay.
Like, so you have to do some other things, and you don't know that until you get there. You know, that's the kind of stuff lawyers are paid to know, where it's like, no, this is the way you actually do it.
Yeah, but you know, when you're starting up, you don't have fee or like, you know, the budget for expensive lawyers.
So I would say I probably, just in getting started in my original space, which was not even viable, I just didn't realize it. And there was that kind of caving into, you know, mental situation where you realize that what you're doing is not viable.
Right.
And I paid for some construction in the place, and I just, you know, I probably wasted like 18 grand.
18 grand?
Yeah.
So did you take out loans for this?
Family.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I borrowed money from family.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and that money is just like basically burnt.
Right.
Well, I was like, man, if I just knew the real way from the beginning,
yeah,
you know, but here I am. So
you didn't know you don't have any like small business friends that helped give you advice or anything like that?
I asked for advice, but the thing about it is people don't necessarily know what your constraints are. Like they might have been working with, you know, 100K or 50K.
Right.
You know, you're working with 20K or whatever.
Right.
You know, they don't ask the questions because they're not necessarily, their skin's not really in the game. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, if it were like me, like I said, my whole coaching kind of mentality is I would literally give someone an hour of my time who was my friend and tell them like, no, make sure you do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Do not do that, this, or this, you know, just to save them, because I like watching people do things the right way.
Right.
You know, but I got hooked up with an architect who turned out to be a slime ball and basically charged me to do some plans that ended up not really even being necessary.
Gotcha.
It's just one of those things. So,
so when you became 18K in the hole, I'm sure that had some like provided some pressure for you to actually produce some results.
Yeah, I mean, I just had to always look at where I was.
Yeah.
And know that at the end of the day, my family wasn't going to trip. Like, they told me, like, hey, you know, if this doesn't work out, we're not going to, you know, hold your feet to the fire.
Okay.
But we do want to get paid back, but it's not
for
like,
sure.
you know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, trust me, I want to pay you back.
Super supportive, I know.
So, you know, I had a lot of room to fail.
Yeah.
And I think in a way that kind of, and I have to think about that constantly. Like, I have room to fail, so why not try harder?
Yeah. Like, what's the worst thing that could happen?
It's a paradox.
Yeah.
The more kind of leeway you have to fail, the more freedom you have to just really try and go for it.
Okay.
You know.
Okay. So going about, I mean, we're at, you know, great thank you and shout out to Edge of Sweetness, 6034 North Broadway.
Yeah.
And this is currently where you operate?
This is where I operate, yeah.
Okay.
So I rent some space in the back kitchen there.
Okay.
Yep.
And you know, just to give us some perspective, how much time are you actually spending in production?
So typical brew time, I will usually take about 3 hours to get the whole thing going.
Every day?
Not every day, like maybe every other day or every 3 days.
Okay.
That kind of thing for now until my volume picks up.
Okay.
It's about a 16-hour turnaround for the coffee. So
yeah.
It's just...
That's it, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I guess the coffee, how did you find that fine balance? Because our good friend Jake, I think he says like 24 hours.
Everybody has their own kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
so you can tweak the amount of water and the amount of coffee and how fine it is to find what works for you.
Sure.
So for my personal taste, 16 works. I know Jake likes it kind of thicker.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he likes to go like, you know, half dark, half light.
He does, yeah.
And then
yeah.
do the 24-hour thing.
Right.
So, and his comes out really awesome.
Right.
It comes out like super pungent, like really strong. It's
It is strong.
Yeah. So,
I gotta let it sit for a minute with the ice. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's like woo. That's like it comes out like booze.
Well, I feel like his tolerance is like
His
way up
tolerance
here.
is through the roof, and his
But
like
for the average consumer.
when meeting Jake was funny because he reached out to me because he went over to Metropolis and they told him about me.
Oh.
And they were like, yo, you should link up with Justin because he was talking to him about Kyoto style.
Oh,
so he
okay,
shot me a DM. And I was like, yeah, dude, let's hang out. We'll chop it up real quick and talk about Kyoto. And he comes in like, and I'm like, man, this dude, like he does something. Like he's like trains or something. Like he just, like you can see
There's
it.
an aura.
Yeah. And I was like, dude, like, what are you up to? He's like, oh, I wrestle, I do taekwondo, that stuff, like do jujitsu. I was like, oh, me too.
Yeah.
And he pulls out this jar of coffee and gives it to me. And I'm like, whoa, that looks like crude oil. It's like super thick, rich coffee. And the only coffee I've seen that dark is my own.
Okay.
So I was like, whoa, he knows what he's doing.
Right.
I tried it and I was like, wow, man, this guy really knows what's up. So
I know.
Yeah, ever since then, we just been boys kicking it.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. How many vats do you have?
Just one. Yeah.
Just one?
Yeah.
Because I feel like you're pumping out, you're sending a lot of, you have a lot of customers, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But
I do one
it?
big one.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's why it takes 3 hours because you got to let it go slow.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
I just always thought you had like 5 setups going at the same time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, do you think the operation will ever expand to that?
If I can get the process to expand, obviously I want the operation to get bigger, but I don't know.
You don't want to lose the quality?
I don't want to lose the essence of what it is
because,
when I started making it bigger, I had to throw away so much coffee. And that's when the stakes were lower. Because as you get bigger batches, there's a risk to throw away like $200, $250 worth of coffee.
Is this if there's no buyer?
If there's a mistake you make.
Oh, if there's a mistake.
If you brew it and it doesn't go correctly.
Right.
That used to happen to me a lot.
Right.
And now it happens hardly ever.
Yeah.
But in that growth of going from a smaller brewer to a larger brewer and figuring out how to do it, I wasted so much coffee just doing it incorrectly.
So that being said, have you sent a bad batch to someone?
No. I've sent the batch where I felt like, see, I'll freak out if I feel like
it's not up to you.
I oversold it, where I was like, oh, this coffee is great. And I'm like, it's good, but it's not great.
Oh.
And when I say good, not great, it's like, oh, people will be like, oh, I like this. And when I say great, I mean, I want people to be like, wow.
Yeah.
Right. And I would stress out for a day over that.
Right.
So I don't like sending back.
I'm sure I think Jake told you this as well, but he was able to bring a batch to his CrossFit gym.
Yeah.
And it was like the line and the nitrous was not cleaned. Mm-hmm. Right. So the people that drank his cold brew weren't a fan.
He was probably furious.
Yeah. It was definitely frustrating when the source of their frustration is not your coffee, it's something else.
And that just comes with the territory. My ability to troubleshoot, I'm one of those guys who will listen to a car and then tell you what's wrong with it. My ability to troubleshoot coffee related things is kind of that level now where people are like, oh, it's not coming out this way. And I'm like, yeah, fixed. Okay. And one of those things is did you clean your lines? I know you didn't clean your lines. Nobody cleans their lines.
Okay. So you have 2 of your bags with us, 2 of your pouches with us. Let's see what they look like.
Yep.
And,
so
go ahead.
This is the dark roast here.
Yeah.
Flagship with the instructions on the back.
Right.
So you basically get 12 servings of coffee in each pouch.
Yeah.
About 4 ounces of coffee per serving.
Okay.
Because this is a concentrate.
Right.
And then you could just dilute it.
I think a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
Right. So what's the cost of one of those?
So one of these on my website is $40, which includes the shipping.
Right.
And you can get a discount if you subscribe monthly. So you get starting at 20% off all the way up to the 37% off.
So if someone were to cost per cup, how does it break down then?
It breaks out to around $225, $250.
Completely
range.
worth it, especially if people are paying $5 for a cup of Starbucks.
Right. And it's making the comparison is very hard because there are times where I'm out selling it and people are like, oh, this is too much. If I make coffee at home, it costs me this much.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, because you had to make it.
Yeah.
If you go try to get someone else to make your coffee for that price.
Right.
And see how that goes.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Not to mention just like the quality, if you make a mistake with your coffee and it's not as good, you have to drink it.
Yeah.
If I make a mistake with the coffee, you never see it.
Right.
That kind of thing. So trying to compare it as much to going out for coffee, because at the end of the day, it is someone else making your coffee for you.
Yeah, it is.
Right. With that said, I think considering the level of quality on it, it's a deal in my book. Like one of my customers who subscribes to 2 pouches a month, he gets that's $55 a month. And he's like, dude, that's a bargain. He tells me that like just about every time he sees me. He's like, that's a bargain for what this is.
Yeah. And even has like a little like easy pour.
Yeah, it's got
easy
a spout
punch
on it.
So like how did you decide on this packaging?
I wanted something that would mail very easily. And I wouldn't have to worry about it breaking.
Okay.
And I wouldn't have to worry about it being too heavy.
Are there constraints on what you can ship then?
Yeah, I mean, I can't ship like glass bottles. They're just too heavy.
Okay.
And there's a risk of them breaking.
But you can ship liquids and all that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, as long as they're not flammable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. And are there any other like methods of like products you're producing?
So at the moment, I have it's not conceptual because I've actually done it, but the next product that I want to release is going to be coffee rubs for steaks.
Coffee rubs.
Yeah.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I started making steaks at home with coffee rub.
Yeah.
And I was putting together my secret blend of herbs and spices.
Okay.
And my wife was like, damn. She's like, this is really, really
Okay.
good. Because I found out, like, how do you blend the coffee flavor into the spices too?
Yeah.
Because coffee is a spice.
Okay.
Like, technically, it's a
Yeah.
spice.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a seed.
Yeah.
A ground seed.
Right, yeah.
Which, makes it a spice.
You just never would have thought the two
Yeah.
would have paired together. And where did that come from?
That came actually from one of my buddies who's also a customer.
Okay.
And he had me over and he made a steak with a coffee rub. And I was like, wow, Dave, this is amazing.
Is he like collabing with you on this or?
Oh, I just picked his brain. I was like, dude, do you mind if I turn this into a product? He's like, whatever, I'm not gonna do it. So
Thank you for the blessing.
yeah, I was like, I'm gonna go ahead and put my little spin on it and
Yeah,
find the spices I want to use
Right,
and turn this into
right.
a product. But having that steak at his place, I was like, wow, this is incredible.
Right. How do you go about picking the beans and the roasters for you, or do you do anything yourself? Or?
Oh, so I don't roast myself. It's challenging. It requires a whole nother level of expertise that I don't have yet.
Okay.
But it's definitely in the, I want that to be my lexicon.
Yeah.
The ability to roast and the ability to, teach other people to roast for me and that sort of thing.
Right.
But as it stands right now, I use Metropolis for my dark roast, my flagship.
Okay.
And then I've mostly been using Counterculture these days for my light
I haven't
roast.
tried counterculture.
Well, now you have.
Oh, dope. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
I like them.
It's awesome.
Huh.
Counterculture, and that's like a throwback because at my original job that I worked as a barista,
Yeah.
I got trained by Counterculture.
Okay.
Because they became a Counterculture client. Counterculture only does wholesale beans.
Okay.
So they don't have any cafes, but they offer training to their accounts as a part of the deal.
Okay.
So, and now I'm collabing with them. I'm their unofficial coffee brewer for a cold brew in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
So when they have an account that's looking for cold brew, they send them to me.
Okay. Is there? And that's all. Congrats on that, by
Thanks.
the way. That's awesome. But is there? So going back to roasting, do you think you'd ever want to dabble in that and have it as a service you'd want to provide?
Nah, that I don't want to do.
You would never want to make your own beans?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Traveling to Hawaii and other parts of, I forget where else I went to. I think it was mainly Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
Going to these coffee farms, I think I was just super fascinated by that. Just being able to walk the fields and just see the process and all that.
Yeah.
But none of that really appeals to you, huh? Okay.
No, I do not want to sell beans.
Okay.
Nope. It's a pain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a whole nother workflow.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's a real pain.
And I guess you don't want to spread yourself too thin either.
Yeah, I stick to what I know.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'd necessarily be the best roaster.
Okay.
I mean, I could become.
It'll be
easy.
easier to just collab with someone that's doing it good already.
Yeah, or like for example, I'm not at all convinced that the way that you need to roast for Kyoto style cold brew is the way you want to roast for everything else.
Oh.
Like I would not be surprised at all if 7 years from now,
Yeah.
I'm actually an amazing roaster, but I'm only amazing at roasting for Kyoto style coffee because it's all I care about as far as what I'm producing.
And that wouldn't be, there's no mass appeal to that because most people don't do Kyoto. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it might be like just that sweet spot for Kyoto.
Yeah.
Whereas everything else, you know,
yeah,
that could be the case.
You know, also, I don't think we ever went over the process of Kyoto, right? So can you explain like the pros and cons of drip style and Kyoto style versus French press, which I'm sure more people are familiar with French press.
Yeah. So basically the way I like to talk about coffee is there are generally two ways you can brew. So you can either do a drip or an immersion. So a drip would be like a Chemex, a pour over, anything where the water is going through the coffee and then out. An immersion would be something where the coffee grounds are kind of free floating in the water. And that would be more like a French press, or the conventional way of making cold brew is the same way. It's the same way you make tea, you know, just steep, right? So the kind of pros of drip over immersion is you get benefits from something I call drip efficiency. Okay. Which is, if you can imagine those coffee grounds floating around in the water, they're all surrounded by water, right? Yep. But that water has coffee molecules in it. It's saturated with coffee. So its ability to extract is diminished because it's saturated. Okay. It's why you can't, at a certain point, if you make, let's say, simple syrup, right, with sugar and water, at a certain point, you add sugar in and it's not melting anymore. Yeah. It's reached a saturation point where it's not going to dissolve anymore. Yeah. And the same thing is going to be true with the extraction potential of that water. Okay. So as that sits, it's extracting, but it's diminishing returns.
So watered down, essentially.
Yeah. It becomes diminishing returns over time. Yeah. And then also, you notice that when you are finished brewing and you filter the coffee out, it's wet, right? Yeah. Well, it's got water stuck to it, but it also has coffee stuck to it. Yep. Because that's what it was floating around in. So you actually end up taking some of the coffee that you've extracted out of it and you just put it right back on the ground. So it's not efficient. Yeah. Whereas when you drip, fresh water comes through, and you notice those first little drips that come out are super thick. So you're allowing the coffee extract to come out of the system.
Fully come out, yeah.
Exactly. And it's being replaced with fresh water. Yeah. So you end up taking advantage of that efficiency.
Yeah. So with Kyoto, do you have to stop the water at a certain point? Like when you know that, like, okay.
I mean, you just let it get like fully saturated. Yeah. And then you run it.
Okay.
So you do have to allow the coffee to basically kind of expand. Yeah. The coffee will absorb some water and expand. Yeah. And you just give it a little pause for that time. Yeah. And then you just run it. Because if you don't pause, then, and I found this out the hard way, the water will just go through one spot. Yeah.
So when you tried to get the business off the ground, it's I think Kyoto in itself is a very like marketable process and setup, right? Yeah. They're just like, it's very intriguing and like just doesn't want to be like just looking at glass, right? Were there any other like humps to go over?
Oh, how long you got, man? I mean, there were humps all day.
Okay.
All day.
So I mean, let's talk some like marketing shop then. Like what has been the bedrock of getting the brand out there?
It's been word of mouth, really. Okay. Like, number one thing has been word of mouth. I get orders from places where I've never run an ad. You know, I've never done any marketing. Like, it's funny. So, outside of Chicago, the number one place that I get orders from are LA, Philadelphia, and Brooklyn.
Did you ask them how they found out?
Yeah, they said someone told them. So, the people who by chance happened to order it in those areas told people. And then those people ordered, and then those people told people. Yeah. So I have people who subscribe who are in LA. I have people who subscribe who are in Brooklyn.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I've never sold coffee in those places.
You are on a Reddit thread as well.
Yeah, so I created a Reddit ad, and it ended up becoming its own kind of mini thread because there was so much like back and forth between people. And it was kind of funny because I created the ad, and I immediately got all this like hate, like foul ad, be gone type stuff, you know? Right. And there were a couple people who were like, oh, you know, I don't mind this. It's like homegrown coffee. Maybe I'll check it out. Looks cool, you know? And then there are some people who were like, oh, you know, I'll pass, that kind of thing. And eventually the people who said, I'll try it, came back and said, yo, this was incredible. Right. And then other people were like, you're paid. And it's like, no, this person's like not paid. And it became this whole kind of back and forth.
Sure.
And before I knew it, I just had a bunch of good reviews on my ad
Right.
in the kind of comment section.
Right.
And it became this thing. And I made a habit of every day at 10 p.m., I would just go through it and see what people said and just make sure I got back to them.
Right. Customer service kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just, you know, I had one guy who traveled from like Carroll Stream.
Yeah.
He drove here just to try some coffee, just to buy a cup of it at the farmer's market.
Dope.
I was like, what are you up to here? He's like, oh, just buying your coffee. And I was like, wait, you came here just, he's like, yeah. I'm like, dude, you drove like an hour and 15 minutes just to buy a cup of coffee? He's like, it sounded good, man.
Well, no pressure though.
Yeah. I was like, I kind of want to give this to you. Like,
so that being said, I mean, there's a very good organic feel to that. And like, I love the saying, like, let your game speak. And you've certainly done that for yourself. But is there anything on top of that, maybe like social media, Instagram? I don't think you have a YouTube channel.
No, I mean, I have a YouTube channel, actually. It has a video of me doing judo throws and my post-mortem after I got second place at Coffee Fest.
Yeah, and like competitions.
Yeah.
Right? That's another thing. That's another way to get your name out there.
Yeah, that's true. I think going forward, one of the things that I am kind of focusing on is getting more pop-ups and smaller businesses to collab with me and carry my product as their coffee.
Yeah.
So one thing that I kind of noticed is like, so when you start a company, especially a food service company, you start to learn the ropes. You start to learn why certain things are the way they are. You start to learn why when you go to a really big establishment, like not even necessarily a chain, but just a large establishment in a really expensive place from a real estate standpoint, why you don't get local craft beer. Because their rent is so high that their margins are made up on the beverage.
Yeah.
So, you know, you might go to a restaurant or a place to get some food, and the food margins are kind of thin. Food is expensive generally, especially, you know, if you're getting steak and chicken and all that stuff. That stuff is expensive, especially if it's quality. So their margins on that are not very good.
Okay.
Every place that sells food makes their money on drink. So they want your product to be at a 10% cost, 20% cost. So what that means is for every $1 they spend on your product, they want to make $5 to $10 back. That's hard to do with a really quality product.
Yeah.
You know, my costs are already high because I'm sourcing quality. And then on top of that, they want to make a certain amount of margin. So it kind of restricts the places that you can appear in just by the nature of the economics.
Right.
I mean, you can circumvent that by becoming bigger, you know, but right now I'm not bigger. I'm my size.
Right. I've noticed that some really good microbreweries, like off the top of my head, like Noon Whistle or More Brewery, or even Three Floyds out in Indiana.
Yeah.
Right. They're not in the city. They're not in big city Chicago. So, you know, because they might not have to pay such a high rent, they can have quality food and their own quality beer being served there. So,
yeah. And still that holds true to the thesis, which is their beer allows them to sell the food.
That too, yeah.
They make money off beer.
Right.
You know, and so beer is actually a really interesting, there are two beverages that really intrigue me a lot. One of them's beer and one of them's soda.
Okay.
Like soft drinks.
Sure.
Because they put pressure on where I can appear. They're not perfect substitutes by any means, but they are substitutes for what I offer. So if someone goes to a restaurant, they have an option to get soda, coffee, beer. You know, keeping it simple. There are other options. So let's look at it from the restaurant's point of view. Soda, a 16-ounce soda might cost them 16 cents.
Right.
Like literally. They can sell that for $2.
Right.
So they've hit their margin. You know, they've hit their range of, you know, 80 to 90%, right? Let's look at beer. I just went to a local craft store, my buddy's store. Shout out Off Premises.
Okay.
Off Premise Wines and Liquors.
Where's that at?
It's on Armitage, just like a few blocks west of the Brown Line stop. on
Oh,
Hermitage.
dope. Okay.
Yeah, really awesome. He gets like a lot of biodynamic wines, a lot of
Okay.
like unfiltered wines, and
Wow.
that Sauvignon Blanc that we just picked up is amazing. It's
Okay.
$15.
There you go.
But in any case, I picked up some local craft beer from him, 2 4-packs. Each 4-pack was $7.
That's it?
Yeah, I mean it was marked down because they were trying to get their name out. It was Middlebrow.
Okay.
And they're trying to kind of, because they just got a new space.
Okay.
So they're trying to get the word out. So they're discounting the
Sure,
beer and just, usually it's $10.
Well, I just can't. Yeah, I've spent like $13, $15. Noon Whistle on their Instagram was given 1 can for $10 of their coconut stout or coconut porter.
Yeah, and I mean the ingredients with beers and the age and all the processing can add a lot of cost to it.
I'm sure, yeah.
But like a good 4-pack of craft beer retails at a small store for $10.
Yeah.
So that is $2.50 a can for beer. He probably paid like $1.30 per can.
So yeah, he's not making high margins on it.
He's making like maybe a 50% margin
Right.
on that. But that shows you how cheap the cost of beer is. I mean, there's some places that like when you see happy hour specials for PBR,
They're still making a margin on it.
yeah, they're still making a margin even though they're selling the PBR for $2.
Right.
Right? So they might have a 50-cent cost on that.
Right. I love PBR though.
Yeah,
just like,
I mean, it's so
I drink
trashy,
PBR,
but
but I
it's
can drink
like-
craft beer too.
Yeah, right? You gotta go, right? Get you a man who can do both. So yeah, but in any case though, it's impossible to make good coffee that cheap.
Okay.
Like unless you're doing this crazy big operation where everything is like integrated into one company.
Yeah.
And you've bought a bunch of stuff in advance and you have like canning, equipment and all that stuff, right?
Right.
So it's really hard to offer the same margins that beer can offer because that same can that he bought for, $1.30, and that he's selling at a store, for $2.50, you go to a bar, they crack that can open for you. Now all of a sudden it's $6.50. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
But they still paid the $1.30 for it.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't do that with coffee. You can't say, "Oh, I'm going to spend $1.30 on coffee and then sell it for
Sell it for like
$6.50."
$6.
That's not going to happen.
Oh man. Now that should segment into the next part, which you've partnered with Cindy's.
Yeah.
So-
Well, not with Cindy's exactly. So Cindy's uses my coffee in some of their drinks.
Okay.
Particularly, I partner with the beverage director there.
Sure.
Yeah. So he found the coffee and we started collaborating.
And that allows for greater margins because now it's not just coffee. It's an ingredient in a cocktail.
Yeah.
Right?
And the great thing about my coffee is you can use a small amount to add flavoring. So one of the things that originally struck me about the coffee was that it can be used as a bar ingredient. And that would actually be a way for me to get around some of the restrictions that places had, like on not carrying coffees because they have a contract with another company where it's like, well, you can only carry this coffee. And it's like, just ring it up as a bar item. It's not a coffee item, it's a bar item as a component for cocktails. Because there are a lot of unique benefits from having a really strong concentrate that also doesn't have any obscurity as far as like looking through it. Like visually, espresso is not appealing when you make a drink with it. But this, super clear, super appealing.
Yeah.
So,
Damn. And then also recently you've partnered with Metropolitan.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they do a series of coffee infused lagers.
And that blew my mind too because I'm more familiar with the stouts, like coffee stouts,
Right.
but lagers.
Yeah. So we do they, for one, do some of the best beer in the city, in my opinion. Very old traditional style German lagers.
Yeah, they specialize in lagers.
Yeah, that's all they do. And they have, Schwarz beers, which are like really dark beers.
Okay.
And then they also have like Helles lagers, which are like, or Helles.
Yeah.
Helles lagers, which are like straw colored, super light. We did a coffee infused Helles, which is like unheard of.
Okay.
That's basically a coffee pilsner,
Okay.
but then lighter than that. And we managed to maintain a straw-like color in that beer and still impart coffee flavor into it that was balanced and nuanced and well integrated. And it actually really highlighted the minerality of the water that was used to make that beer.
Yeah. And how did this partnership come about? Is it also word of mouth, or how did this?
So they are actually next door neighbors to Metropolis.
Oh, okay.
So they're getting each other's mail all the time.
Okay.
Basically, you got Metropolitan and Metropolis right next door.
Wow.
Yeah, there's actually a sign when you go there, and it says coffee beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, because they keep people getting confused.
Okay.
So yeah, I used to work for Metropolis,
Yeah.
and back when I was there, they were really interested in the whole Kyoto process. So I was brewing little small batches for them to do little things with, and we were trying to grow it, but it was kind of hard because I wasn't full time doing it. It was just, at Metropolis, and basically they wanted to collab with Metropolis, and the head roaster from Metropolis said, "Hey, why don't we introduce Justin to the mix? We can provide the beans. Justin will brew it, and then you guys can turn it into coffee beer."
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so
nice.
we're doing like this nice little Triforce.
Have you ever tried cold calling or reaching out, just sliding in someone's DMs to open up a possible collaboration?
Yeah, I'm always in the DMs. There are a couple of breweries that have explicitly told me, like, "Hey, we want to work with you. Like, you're on the radar.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of getting the right project together." Some
Yeah.
people I'm really excited to work with.
Okay.
As soon as I get like the definite, like we've
Oh, yeah,
blended,
yeah.
I'll let you know.
For sure,
And, yeah,
for sure.
we can talk about it a little more. But I'm always trying to develop relations with other businesses.
Yeah.
And just really find people who are trying to do really cool stuff and appreciate, the process. So.
Right, right. So on top of collaborations, you also, I think, said earlier, donut shops.
Yeah.
Right. So what's stopping you from? And I'm sure because they already use dark matter, but like Do Right Donuts or maybe Stan's Donuts uses Intelligentsia, but like,
Yeah.
would that appeal to you, having your bottles of
it
Kyoto
could potentially,
Black?
yeah. I mean, we run back into the same question, which is okay. It's less of a question with the donut places, but it's still the issue of margins. It's like you make good margins on donuts, but you still want to have that really solid margin on coffees and whatever beverage
So what,
you're
because
serving.
dark matter can mass produce their coffee, their margins a little higher, or?
Well, I wouldn't say that it's because dark matter can necessarily mass produce it. It's because they can buy a coffee explicitly for that purpose. That is like, hey, we need to meet this cost level.
So resources.
Not even resources exactly. It's so in order for them to serve my coffee, they'd have to water it down to the point where it was really profitable for them, like to the level that they want it to be.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Because I'm not going to change the coffee I use.
It's interesting
Whereas
'cause
you go to dark matter, it doesn't. And I don't want to. It's not dark matter. It's just roasters can say, well, we'll source this coffee for you. It's at a lower cost. We'll roast that and provide it because it meets the spec for you.
Okay.
And that's fine. I don't necessarily want to do that. I've thought about it, but it's like I have my product already.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, imagine going to Coca-Cola and saying, hey, we want you to make Pepsi. It's like, that's not what I make.
Okay.
We don't make Pepsi. We make Coca-Cola.
Okay.
And that's kind of the situation you find yourself in, where it's like, if you want to get with some of the places that are like a little bigger, they're gonna want you to use a coffee that is just a lower cost. It's easy for a roaster to do that because they can just source a coffee that's a lower cost.
Okay.
What you're asking me to do as a packaged goods company is say, okay, I'm gonna introduce a whole new SKU and a whole new workflow to make a coffee just for you. That's at a lower price point. And then now where does my branding come into play in that? Do I want to put my brand on that? Or do I want to just kind of white label it and make
That's
money?
interesting. Because when I do go to, I probably go to Do Right Donuts by Northwestern once a week.
Yeah.
And when you ask for the cold brew, I guess I don't care too much about where it's coming. It tastes good, but like I'm not asking myself like, where is this from?
Right.
So yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
And I guess like with the creativity as well, like you probably feel more creatively fulfilled, like collaborating with, making cocktails or different beers and stuff.
It's not to say like, I love donuts, and there's some great donut places in the city.
What about a coffee infused donut?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Coffee ube.
Yeah, right. Yeah, just like making it happen, man. I mean, I'm sure you can do like a coffee jelly and put that in a donut. That'd be dope because coffee jelly's dope.
Right.
But it just, when you have places that are like investor driven,
Yeah.
they become we have to get our money back quickly.
Yeah.
And that kind of takes a little bit of the romance off the table.
I hear you.
And that's fine. You know, that's what they have to do.
Business is business, yeah.
It's business. They got to make that money back because we're not going to be in good times forever, you know. So with that said, ironically enough, the places that can kind of less afford it are the ones who buy my coffee because they care about it being great.
Yeah.
They'll make their money, but they just want to serve a great product that they're excited to move.
Right.
They don't have to return money to investors.
And how do you identify these potential collaborators?
First thing I do is I look at what they sell.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, if they're doing what they do great, they're only going to want something equally as good next to it.
You're right.
So if I go to a place and the donut's not that great, it's probably not going to be a good fit.
Yeah.
They probably, if they're willing to sell a bad donut, they probably don't care to sell good coffee.
Right.
They certainly don't care to pay more to sell good coffee.
Right.
You know? But if they are doing it great, then that's usually the first indicator. The second indicator is if I give them some of my product and they look excited. You know, I'll just go somewhere cold with product and
that's the
just
thing.
gauge their
So
excitement.
with when you're cold calling or sliding into DMs for people that you have never conversed with, and you know, going back to the Gary V, like how are you providing? What type of value are you providing? Like what do you tell them? Like, hey, I can give you a batch of this. Like, I don't know if you've heard, but this is the cool, like, best shit in the town. Like, what do you say to hook them so they can respond? Because most DMs just go get lost, right? So, like, how do you garner that response?
So the first thing that I do is I just reach out to them as a person. And I just I kind of hang out with them in the DM.
Okay.
So like if they have a story, I'll just comment on their story.
Right.
And I'll really only comment on their story if I actually feel like commenting on it.
Right.
So if, for example, if there's a person or a restaurant that I want to interact with and they're putting out stories that kind of are not interesting, I'll just look at it and won't say anything to them.
Yeah.
And then when they put out a story that actually I feel it, I'll say something.
Right.
Yeah. I did that today.
I hear you. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I did that today. I was like, oh, this is funny. Let me, you know?
Right.
Because it's real.
They get to see who you are as a person and not just as a company.
And it's like, okay, now that I kind of talk to them, I'm going to keep talking to them because now I don't necessarily need them to be funny anymore.
Yeah.
I've talked to them, they responded back, and now I can just still not necessarily sell them, but just talk to them.
There's a time and place for everything, and no one likes. I guess it just feels awkward when you're trying to just keep pushing whatever you're trying to push.
Yeah.
Right. And you and I probably both agree, like, we both hate being salesy, right? So if something comes out of it, something comes out of it. If nothing comes out of it, hey, you know, we had some good conversations, but
I try to force serendipity to happen.
Oh, okay. Does it feel manipulative?
No, it doesn't. Because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to
make it
and do our thing and leave our impact. But it's I'll be mercenary in the sense that I'm doing this for a purpose. I'm not doing this just to be Mr. Oh, I'm going to go and just
Mr.
slide in
Quirky.
someone's DM and
Right.
just make them feel good.
Right.
I don't do it where it's hey, this is how I can help you do blah, blah, blah. But it's I'm going to make a connection with them on my terms, trying to build a business relationship. They didn't come here to not make money. Neither did I.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to put the seed in there, and I put my face on everything these days. So they'll know it's me when they see me. I'm pretty easy to recognize. And at some point I'll run into them. It's a small town.
Yeah.
I run into people I know all the time. So
yeah.
It's literally, I'll see someone. I was like, oh, I was just on their Instagram yesterday.
Dang.
You know? And just play that slow game. Just play it slow.
Right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are just caught up in the instant gratification
Yeah.
age, right? And if it's not happening automatically, they think it's never going to happen. But just like how you and your wife have that awesome mentality of we're not broke.
Or we're not poor. We're broke.
Or we're not poor. We're broke.
Yeah.
Right. And we're rich in other aspects of our
Exactly.
life. Right. So I love that. Do you have any bold plans for 2019?
Yeah, I want to hire somebody
For what?
to package my coffee.
Okay.
And to work my trike.
Trike?
Yeah, I have a coffee trike.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think I heard about this.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how often are you on this trike?
In the summer, once a week.
Okay.
And that's only because I'm restricted in how much time I can spend on it.
Yeah.
I mean, if I didn't have to be here and doing all these other things, I'd want that trike to be out pretty much every day.
Right.
But
At like certain festivals or just out on Lakeshore
yeah,
Drive?
so I
or-
figured out the kind of the cadence for it, and I was popping up at festivals for a while. So starting a business, it's an education, man.
Dude,
It's
it
a
is.
real education.
Yes.
And I learned it's all about arbitrage.
The street MBA.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all about arbitrage. It's basically what's overvalued, what's undervalued, what's overpriced, what's underpriced. And it's like festivals overpriced, flat out overpriced. Some of these festivals want $1,500 for you to have a booth there.
But a trike? What about a trike?
Some of these festivals want like several $100s for you to pop up with a trike.
Oh.
Yeah. Or they don't allow it because they want you to have a booth because that's what they make money off of. You know. And some of them, they don't charge as much, but there's a reason. Because nobody shows up. Or you might get lucky and find a great arbitrage opportunity as far as value for exposure. But then what about relevance? Like, how relevant is what you're offering to what people are looking for? What time of day is it? What are people in the mood for? How much alcohol is being served? Because if there's a lot of alcohol at the event, you're not selling any coffee.
Right.
No one's going to buy coffee from you.
Right.
You know? So you have to think about all these different things and how you fit into the bigger picture of where you are. But one of the things about the trike is I can pop up anywhere. So I can just show up on a corner and be like, hey guys, coffee.
And the city of Chicago doesn't care?
I have a license.
Oh, yeah, you
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
All right.
I worked hard to get it. Yeah. So I have a license that says you can do just that.
Okay.
And sometimes you have to be a little gangster about it. Like, one of the things that I found was I would basically be like one of those little feeder fishes. Next, you know, like a shark has like all those little fish that like follow it.
Yeah.
Right. So I would do that at farmers markets and just be like in the periphery. So I'm like, I'm in the park, but I'm not in the market. And then the organizers would be like, hey, you can't be here. And I'm like, says who?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I'm like, that's the park. This is the public way. And this license right here says that I can sell in the public way. So sorry to be a jerk, but yes, I can. And you just have to play that because it's like you're playing for keeps.
Okay.
To an extent, I look at business. I have to say, okay, business is a competitive endeavor. It's cooperative, but it's also competitive.
Yeah.
So I have to go like, where's that fine line between being like, you know, El Chapo, but not actually like doing all the bad things that El Chapo does.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
you have to look at your business like that.
Yeah. Almost
So-
cutthroat.
You have to be like that. I don't like screwing people over or anything like that, but it's like if someone's telling me that I need to leave, I'm not necessarily just gonna leave just be a nice guy. It's like I just rode a trike here. I'm not about to ride this trike back and not make any money. You know? That thing's heavy and it's hard to steer.
Okay. So with people that walk through, you know, the public way and they don't know about Kyoto Black, what's your like quick elevator pitch to like, hey, this is the best cold brew? Like, what do you tell them?
I tell them, hey, drink this.
Oh.
Yeah, I give them a
Giving
sample of
samples.
coffee.
Oh.
Or I will, you know, funny enough, I don't necessarily have that problem if I pick my relevance correctly. If I pop up in the correct neighborhood during the correct time of day,
All right.
after I've just run a Reddit ad. Reddit ads, underrated. Absolutely underrated.
Okay.
Reddit ads are one of the best deals, at least in Chicago, if you sell a product where people will see you on the streets.
Okay.
Because when I was running my Reddit ads, every day someone stopped me and said, I saw your ad. Not even when I was selling coffee. I'm like picking out bananas. Someone like, yo, you running an ad on Reddit? I'm like, yeah. Like literally. Because, you know, in my Reddit ad, I'm wearing like this t-shirt.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I usually just wear white t-shirts.
Oh, that's so dope.
So I kind of look the same anyway.
Yeah.
And people are like, man, I know you from somewhere. Like Reddit ad? Yeah. I was like, yeah.
Power of Reddit. That's amazing.
Yeah, Reddit. You know, I just put my face right front and center.
That's been around
on the ad.
before Instagram and Facebook, right? So
Reddit
it's
is
like,
people go deep into Reddit, and here's the thing people don't understand about Reddit: people go to Reddit to read.
yeah,
That's what they go there for.
converse and read
And I love writing,
engage. Yeah.
so it's fine. Like actually, I want to talk to you because I noticed ever since we talked, I'm gonna interview you now.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay.
Interview you because I noticed ever since I told you to put your face a little more front and center.
Yeah.
I've been seeing your face all the time.
Well, that's the way the algorithm works.
It's like I've been just seeing more of you.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm actually seeing more of you. I don't know if it's you're putting out more content. I don't know if it's honestly, I just didn't notice the content you were putting out before, and now I do, because I see you instead of seeing just like, a quote or, something that could be someone else's post.
I owe that to you.
Thank you. I'm super happy that you're doing it this way, because I see you all the time now. And I feel like you kind of turned this real like tight corner that makes me feel like I want to pick your brain now. And like, I'm inspired by what you're doing, because you actually took the advice. Because like I said, I like to coach people.
Yeah.
And I was like, I see this little coaching opportunity.
Yeah.
And then you were like very coachable, and then you did it really well.
Appreciate it.
So yeah, dude, like talk to me a little bit about that. If I can just like kind of cross interview you.
Well, you made so much sense when that it's a very generic thing. If you were to just like take a quote that you resonate with and put your brand on the bottom, it's easy for anyone to just like cut and paste that, remove your name and put their name up there. And that hit home for me. And I'm like, yeah. And then and in my feed, I see that left and right. I'm scrolling like that's all I see. So the way to personalize it and put your face on it, no one can steal your face. Right. No one can steal the way you deliver the message, right? So it takes practice. Not everyone is, comfortable in front of the camera, and it's still a work in progress. But I have also just noticed a spike in engagement when your face is on there, when they can actually connect with the person behind the message. Yeah. Right. So you can type all you want in the caption, as deep and as thoughtful as you want, but I think people really want to see the person behind the brand. Yeah. And I think we're going to go back and forth because, I've been wanting to see the same thing from you. Like, I think a lot of people appreciate the behind the scenes, like the process the work and effort that goes into it. And, maybe one day you'll have enough in your budget to hire someone to just do that for you, to have the D-Rock to the Gary V, to someone just document the process, the daily life. Yeah. But that has like been the change for me this year. And I'm still working out like where I want to take it. I mean, I have so much content now, and thanks to that, Gary V, like long form / short form content model, like I'm definitely using that right now, but it's still a work in progress, and there's always room for improvement. But as far as like monetizing anything, like these hoodies, like it's building the brand behind the hoodies. Anyone can slap anything they want on a hoodie or on a t-shirt, and I'm sure you probably learned that as well. But when people rock with your brand, they'll go as far as like, hey, Justin, can you sign this for me? Can you make it out to such and such? 'Cause,
that's crazy.
Right.
That happened to you?
It did.
That's awesome, isn't it?
Once, most recently. And I've never met the guy in person. We've been trying to connect in person, but just through social media. And I was like, you really want me to write on this? He's like, yep. That's dope. He's like, one day you're going to make it big. I'm like, oh, I appreciate that.
That's really awesome. That's a good feeling when someone asks you to sign something. It's like,
but as far as like the primary source of income, I maybe one day turn it into a consulting thing or a coaching thing. It's just like there's so many life coaches out there.
I hear you.
It's like I don't want to be that guy either.
Yeah, and I almost feel like to kind of chop it up on air. Yeah, I feel like when I look at what you're doing and the kind of energy you bring and the kind of intention you bring. The thing that I would say, if I were going to point you towards anything, it would be like creating a community of people that are like us, right? In our very same position, right? To help us grow each other, right? And it's crazy the amount of osmosis and the amount of opportunity that springs forward when you get enough people who are very similar in their life trajectory and in their like current circumstance and
or just want the best for each other,
right? You ever look back and see like, oh, perfect example. So I'm a huge Jean-Michel Basquiat fan.
No idea.
So he's an artist. He's dead. He's been dead for like 30 years. Sure. But in any case, though, you probably would recognize his art if you saw it. It's some of the most expensive art you'll see. Okay. Like one of his paintings sold for $110 million. Oh, okay. Yeah. The guy from, do you know Zozotown? No. Zozotown is a Japanese fashion company, online fashion. Okay. And the guy who started Zozotown bought his painting, which I think is the most expensive painting sold. Things like the Mona Lisa don't count because it wasn't sold. Yeah. But I think it was maybe the second most expensive painting sold, but it's, in any case though. I really like Jean-Michel Basquiat, and I started to dig more into his life. And the more I dug into it, he was born in New York and was a part of that whole underground scene in the late 70s, early 80s. And you start seeing Madonna pop up. You start seeing all these Blondie. You start seeing all these people who end up being really influential and a part of the culture, all bubbling up in this same environment. Mm-hmm. And it's like, wait a minute. Jean-Michel dated Madonna before Madonna was Madonna and before Jean-Michel was Jean-Michel. Oh. And they were all in the same scene. That doesn't happen just by accident.
Yeah.
There's this feedback loop. And I mean, you can see that happening on social media now, where it's like, I remember some people who were doing like cosplay back before social media was even a thing. Now they're the people with like 1 million followers.
Yeah, no, the last guy is a professional cosplayer that I interviewed, and he was sharing how big it's grown, and
it's huge.
And he's created a large community in Chicago.
And they know each other.
Yes.
And it's like it bubbled up.
Yes.
Yes. And I feel like I see you as being a really essential hub in a scene here in Chicago.
Okay.
For small business.
Okay. Trying. Yeah, I guess that's the goal, but like, as far as monetizing that, like, I'm all for community.
Right.
I'm all for, and that's where the hashtag Habla Aloha comes from. It's
Yeah.
just like creating a loving community that isn't, complacent. It's just like always looking for the best for each other and for themselves. But yeah, I'm not too worried. Like you said, like, I'm not too worried about the money right now. Like, I'm pouring whatever I need to pour into this in order to make it work. And if one person gets, a good, piece of advice from anything, that's all I'm looking for.
Right.
And if that doesn't even come out of it, then we get to have this like deep, meaningful conversation.
Yep.
And that's all I have. And that's fine. That's fine with that.
And so here's the thing that I'm finding out. So monetizing things is not hard.
Okay.
It's actually not hard. It's the awareness that's hard.
Okay.
Like, I monetize my coffee.
Yeah.
I sell it for a price.
Right.
The awareness is what the value actually comes from. Getting people to recognize it as something they should buy.
Yeah.
Right? So, like the celebrity endorsement,
Yes.
you can reverse engineer it, and people do it all the time. That's the Kardashian model. The Kardashian model is you become well-known and famous, and then you stick a product. That's how you monetize.
Yeah.
You just become recognizable, and then there's a product.
Right.
And it's the celebrity endorsement move for 2019.
So have you looked into like influencers and things like that, or is that considered selling out?
No, I've worked with influencers, and you start to look behind the hood, and you start to see what's real influence and what's not, and you start to understand that at the end of the day, and I talked to a few people, for example, the owner of Kovo, the distillery. She gave me a piece of advice, and she is a wizard. She's one of the sharpest people I've ever met. But she gave me a piece of advice, which was, no one will ever do anything for your company as good as you will.
Absolutely.
So whether it's marketing, making pamphlets, whatever, she's like, do it yourself. Do it all yourself. Like, don't be an egomaniac, but do it all yourself. Mm-hmm. I did my own logo. It comes out.
It's great. Yeah.
All this.
Yeah.
I did it. It's mine. It sells my product.
So that being said, when you said you're ready to hire, is it hard to delegate though, let go of those tasks, or?
So that's when I say do it yourself, that really means do it in house. It's not like you have to do it.
Not outsourcing it.
Don't outsource.
Okay.
That's what she said. Now, there are plenty of people who build their entire careers on outsourcing, but they're not crafting a product.
Because your name's on it.
Yeah. They're scaling maybe a software or a process or some sort of like solution that is, they already did the work and now they just need to keep it kind of running.
Yeah.
So they're paying people to put oil in the gears.
Yeah.
And it's outsourcing, but it's really not exactly, because it's just you have an employee who's in Philippines or India.
Right.
But long story short, don't hire marketing companies, don't hire video companies, none of that.
Don't pay for fake followers or anything like that.
Don't pay for fake followers ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't do any of that stuff.
Have you heard of? Have you been to Nini's Deli? Nini's Deli?
No.
It's like a Cuban little restaurant in Noble Square. The guy behind the counter, it's like a family-run Cuban restaurant. Mom, Pop are in the back cooking everything, and the son's in front. His name's Juan. On Instagram, he goes like at Wani Worldwide, and he's just started his own like clothing line called Chicago Native. And Derrick Rose was spotted wearing his beanie. Right? Oh, it's all up from there, right?
Yeah, right.
So that's the thing. It's like, are you ready for like the one day that your world like just opens up? And
yeah, I'll just raise my prices.
you're not concerned about like, I don't have the production capability to provide for this influx of. You're not even like worried about that.
I'm not even joking. I'll raise my prices. Yeah, I'll just raise my prices until I can
until it
handle
normalizes.
Yeah, and just normalize it. Yeah, it's not a problem.
That makes so much sense.
That's how you handle that problem.
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, that's. Do you have any setbacks that you would change differently if you were to tell someone else about it? Coach someone else about it? Any setbacks through the small biz or through the coffee industry?
If you're doing anything in food, incubate in the kitchen. Do not go and try to get an establishment unless it's a turnkey establishment. Unless that means there was a business doing pretty much what you plan to do in that same space right before you got into it. So like if you want to start a cafe, open up in a place that used to be a cafe, but it closed, or it used to be a bakery and it closed, something that is specifically for the food space.
Is it so like like you don't have to spend on setup costs?
You don't have to spend on build out because as soon as you start doing food, that's when you start cutting into concrete to make drainage. And cutting into concrete is how you get destroyed.
Wise. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And not only that, there becomes this whole issue with permitting and use changes, and that's when the Department of Buildings will take 7 months to do anything for you.
Slow, yeah.
It's super slow. So do not go into a space that is not a turnkey space for what you want to do if it's in the food industry. Just incubate, build the business, in a space where you can afford to bail if you have to.
Okay.
And expect it to be way harder than it actually.
It's gonna be the hardest thing you ever do.
It's gonna be super hard,
but it's yours.
Yeah, and also, here's the number one thing: make sure you know how to build and or use accounting software. And be on that accounting software like crazy. Accounting is, if I got into my business not even knowing how to really, I didn't have a well built out accounting software thing. And if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be here today. Just being able to keep track of my finances that's the lifeblood of everything. So,
what about like the possibility of like a coffee truck or you never want a cafe yourself, right?
I wouldn't say never.
Okay.
I would love to just try to pop up.
Because you still like bacon?
I'm sorry?
Do you still like baking?
Oh, I do. I just don't want to do it because I know so many people who are way better at it than I am. So I'd rather just put them on. Yeah. I'd rather just feature their stuff. Yeah. I like baking for myself, but because here's the thing about baking, you have to wake up at like 4:30 in the morning. And I don't like that at all. Like I barely like waking up for making coffee. People want to get their coffee early in the morning. I'm like, guys, like, you wouldn't need it if you were just still asleep. Like, it's like I'm not a morning person. I'm one of those people who will stay up till 3 a.m. Like if left to my own devices, I will stay up to the point where people are waking up. I'll be going to bed. Yeah, I'm night out like crazy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I had to start being more disciplined about just going to bed early, just to kind of fit with everyone else's kind of schedule. But I wouldn't do anything but what I'm doing for now until I start doing the rubs.
Good luck with that. You remind me of a buddy that I might have told you this last time. His name's Gabe. Jake and I bumped into him when Jake went to Burma with me. And Gabe grew up in Singapore and visited Burma, I think for fun, for pleasure, and then found out that there's a untapped market for gourmet coffee. Ooh. Because they were just used to instant coffee, and it's cheap, it's quick, it actually tastes not too bad. But because the doors to Burma for commercial businesses to come in just opened up, he saw an avenue to make something happen. And he's I think started in the baking industry, and and then opened up his own cafe in the business district. And it's booming, and people are willing to pay a premium for gourmet coffee and baked goods. Yeah. So kudos to him. But like, was that, I mean, awesome. Traveling to another country, or is Chicago home for you?
Well, Chicago's definitely home. Yeah. I want to turn this into a national brand.
Right.
And then eventually international, with Japan being the first international place.
Yeah.
I think it'd be kind of interesting to bring Kyoto style coffee to Japan.
Is there a lot of Kyoto style coffee in Japan?
There's a good amount of it. Yeah. Okay. It's actually funny because Kyoto style coffee originally comes from Holland. So it's in Japan they call it Dutch coffee.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow. So it made its way through the Dutch East India Company to Japan in the 1600s. So the whole reason why it was even used in the first place is because you're on a boat. It's the 1600s, right? You can't start a fire on your boat.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons.
Right.
Including you don't want to waste the fuel.
Right.
And it's a fire hazard. All these different things. So how are you gonna make hot coffee?
Wow.
Right? They like hot coffee. They like coffee, right? So they figured out that hey, we can just make cold brew and take that with us, make cold brew on the boats, and that'll be our coffee.
Yeah.
So the particular way of making the slow drip, it makes that really dense coffee. Mm-hmm. The density makes it stable. It's super stable.
Yeah.
So, and that's how I'm able to ship it for one. It's just like, it doesn't change flavor very easily. And they were using this as their source of coffee for, seafaring. They land in Japan, and Japanese people are like, what's that? They're like, oh, that makes amazing coffee. We'll take one of these along with, the various other things that you bought to trade. Right. And then it really took off in Japan and became kind of more associated with Japan than Holland.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. Wow. Okay. Well, I think that's all I had to pick your brain about. Cool. I have no doubt that 2019 is going to be an awesome, fruitful year for you. With the rubs and the future collaborations. Let me know when the beer stuff comes out. I am keen to try that. I've never heard of a lager, beer or coffee infused lager.
We'll definitely have to get something together.
Yeah, I'm down.
Real interesting though.
But good luck to you, Justin. Thanks for spending some time with us. Hopefully we'll connect again after some time. But yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.